Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time. Time for the good news, the bad news, and the other shit. Yeah. Welcome everybody to the good news, the bad news, the other shit. And it's gotten to be that I do a weekly Trump disaster update, and it's just been happening so fast. So many things since the last time we were with you. And no need to re-report about the tragedy of Charlottesville. Okay, and then the president's very weak stance on that. That's been the news ever since. He's trying desperately to shift it away from that, but the news ever since has been Charlottesville. The president's response, and then the responses, especially those from the GOP, to the president's weak response. The other big news, and the news that we wanted to actually focus on this beginning segment, is the now evolving Trump-Bannon relationship, now that Steve Bannon is no longer a part of the cabinet. So he's left, and he went right back. Stories that I was hearing was that he had met with, I believe it's Robert Mercer, Mr. Mercer of the Mercers, one of the Mercers, who was actually one of the biggest contributor to the Trump campaign. Mm-hmm. Also funds Breitbart, right, do other things. So he met with him, a couple weeks ago, and that even he had met with Donald Trump too. Right. So that all this was planned. Steve Bannon was leaving. The question was what to do. Now, why he was leaving, that's the part that's up for you to speculate. One of the things I will note was that so far the key things to watch are, one, he's one of the few people, maybe the only person so far. No, the second. The first was one of the Russians who actually criticized Trump for calling him, citing his inability to get anything done. Mm-hmm. But this is the first time I've seen someone actually comment on the president in a way where he didn't seem to come back at it. He kind of went against him on North Korea, and then he also said the presidency as we know it is over. Mm-hmm. They had one of the head Breitbart guys. I can't remember exactly what his exact title was, but he was on too. Yeah, and he said, when asked what was Breitbart's position on dealing with the president, were they going to attack the president or go to war with the president? He said, well, it depends what the president does. So far, those are a fair amount of threatening. At least you get the hint that, one, they're certainly willing to criticize the president, even though the stated goal of Bannon has been that he's going to go at people who are getting in the way of the president's agenda, which for the most part means other members of the cabinet.
I mean, he's going to do what he wasn't already doing already. Got it. You know what?
He's going to let it go. He's going to let it go, right? He's going to do more of it right, and go to war.
I thought it was already war.
Right, well, when he said Bannon the Barbarian.
Wait a minute.
I think you're going to get to watch this one. This is going to be incredible because it's crazy.
I'm going to use a relative when I get into my sports. I want to use it now because it's the idea that I'm going like this. Wait a minute. So nobody had an idea that Bannon was coming up here to go. He had two choices. Conform to the existing political platform and philosophy.
He's known for not doing.
Not doing. So he puts him in there and says, okay, I'm going to shake up the world. I'm not here to shake up the world to do it your way, but now more people know me more than they ever did before.
Well, who knew him before?
Yeah.
Who knew of him before? He's become famous, which is what he wants.
Right.
I told people, even though this is unfortunate, I tell people, you have to watch your enemies close. I always say that. So on the day that this whole thing down with Trump and Bannon, even the thing with Charlottesville, that was a great time to go watch Fox Television and read Breitbart News.
Right.
In other words, on the day Bannon, quit, left, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Because it certainly doesn't appear to be a firing.
True.
No matter what they say, that's not because especially listening to the conversation afterward.
Right.
So whatever it was after that, I went and watched and read Breitbart.
Right.
To see just what their spin was, and I watched a lot of Fox television.
Mm-hmm.
That was a day you could really watch Fox because it was not going to bother your stomach. They're going to have to eat the crow all day long. Whatever you. So if you want to, I know it's hard, but if you just want to enjoy on the days where something goes bad, that's for the president. That's when you go watch Fox because. First, they try to make excuses for him, but as it gets more and more lame, they're unable to.
Right.
So you get to watch them struggle with that,
right.
Which is hilarious to me. I'm sorry, I don't get a lot of time. I can actually chuckle to myself with the news, but
there you go, man.
That would be one. So
I think it's just look. I think it's one of those things where they go. What we tell you guys is one thing, but what's been going on in this movement has been a matter of a power play. The relationships are always ongoing. They always have been. What you have is those factions inside that group. That group called the Republican base is going, we're the old cats. We're not changing. So what you doing? It's simple talk. You're not going with the flow? Okay. There's a problem. And I said, he won. He already got in. Platform is louder than ever before. That whole platform, what you see now, I said, he gave rise. I said, before this, everybody was undercover, right? Not too many swingers.
Who had ever heard of Breitbart?
Yeah. So now,
who had ever heard of Steve Bannon? Who had ever heard of Breitbart?
Right. Unless you were watchdogging close and very pro-political. Now all of a sudden, that's what I love about social media. Mario, you know this is the greatest reality show of all time.
Well, there we have it.
Here you go.
There we have it. Okay. So what should we do with these Confederate monuments? And you have to think about the value of monuments and what they do. Of note, I watched a bunch of shows in the last few days, and one of the shows I found particularly interesting was to look at what Germany did. Because the Germans essentially had a horrible reputation internationally for genocide.
Right.
Even though we've had other genocidal occurrences, it looks like genocide is something, unfortunately, that happens.
Right.
And so some are not known. We just learning. I had never learned about the Armenian genocide. Okay. That's what the ones I'm talking about. We had never discussed.
Right.
So I looked at what Germany did on the shows because Germany has a lot to deal with and what they did because there are no monuments left around to Hitler.
Mm-mm.
See, this is where I go look. Let's go look around the world. So they toppled Saddam Hussein. They tore that monument down.
Right.
But you don't find Nazi monuments anywhere with someone saying, "Oh, that's the old history."
True.
So that doesn't happen. That's part of the whole thing to recognize this whole monuments thing is like about what it's always been about. These were things that were built to remind black people to stay in their place.
Right.
And where they fit into society. That's what it was. Everybody knew it. Come on. The people who try to, no, it's our history. Bullshit. It was done to tell when black folks were, it was a backlash, just like some of this is a backlash to Obama. It was a backlash to the Civil War and black folks having more power during the Reconstruction time.
Absolutely.
And then that's when lynching went crazy. So most of these things were built in a time when they were lynching black people and they were making monuments to remind black people that they were inferior, that they were second-class citizens,
right,
and to stay in their place. That's what most of these are monuments to white nationalism, white supremacy. Right. So when you go look at what's said in a bunch of them, so what should happen to them? To me, because I don't believe you destroy them. I do believe you put them in a museum. Maybe you have a park of old racist statues, and at the beginning you have a big old plaque explaining the history of racism in the United States, and you have a big open park. You put the monuments, and the guides explain the racist policy. All of a sudden, it has a different meaning, because even when it comes to Nazi Germany, I almost think it's better to have those monuments somewhere, even though they forbid any.
Right.
They are hard on any swastika, Nazi,
Yeah.
any of that. They're one of the hardest in terms of what they do in their laws. So interesting to look at. If you want something to look at, go take a look at what Germany did. But I do agree with the history part of it because I don't want to wipe it away. I want to be able to remind it. And I want to actually be able to throw it in the faces of certain people. I'm sorry. Just as a reminder, look at this. Wake up. So take a look. So I do believe in having a museum, and that they should move them. But they can't be in places where they stand as a testimony. And I'll go as far as saying any monument that was erected as a hateful exercise to remind black people of a state of second-class citizenship,
Right.
I think all those should be removed. All of them. The problem is they're getting defaced anyway because people are painting them and doing all kinds of stuff, and then that's hurting people's feelings because they're doing all that. So that's why I posted this picture.
Well, good thing about it is a lot of people are chiming in, same approach about the museum aspect. And I know when we, rest in peace, former Mayor Tom Bradley, when we went to look at, some history about the slaves and what they were brought over in recognition of his achievements, and he was honoring him. This is some years back, and we went to look at the compartments and enslavement ships and everything, and it has a different impact when you go see it. So let's just say that they are not successful in pulling all these down. Then I'd just say, here's the hard case of doing this. Either add the support or a condition of reflecting the lynchings and hangings and the killings in some form or fashion along with those particular statues or whatever. Let them be symbiotic side by side. If you're going to get this up, a lot of people ain't going to want to see this.
Well, wonderful tell the truth. Said that. Because,
so show it so people can get impacted.
No, because that's totally relevant. Because one of the points that's made is that there are monuments all over to victims of the Holocaust. Right. America has yet to even acknowledge, and certainly not as far as we know. I think there was one or two things that some black folks had done. Any monuments to the black slaves,
right,
or what they did. Where is the monuments to that? So that's one of the things we still are. Waiting to see. Sorry again to other Facebook folks. We had a dropout. It's all part of that connection, so we redo it when we get there. So it's one of those things that we do. I'm fixing some stuff right now. People are notifying me, Bigfoot. So give me a second, and I'll fix it right now. It's good how we have to do things.
Well, it's good. They know the backup. They know what the backup plan is.
Okay. Editorial. What happens when a 61-year-old black man experiences progress? Now, I wrote this because I was thinking about tearing up shit.
That's what you were thinking about, bro? You were thinking about tearing up stuff. Okay.
Lord,
I feel you, man.
You guys, I just knocked over. Anyway, because when you watch a lot of the videos, one of the themes that come from non-black folks repetitively is, when will you black people just get over it?
I understand.
That's the recurring theme.
I understand.
Now, my answer to that is, and has always been, we get over it and move on. When you first acknowledge what occurred,
right,
and assign some responsibility that historically the figures, right, in a way that we feel is honest and true to what we experience.
Absolutely.
Then when you do that, we move over it. So recognize when you say that to us, will you just get over it? If you haven't done the first two steps, it becomes an insult. Because what you're suggesting is that we forget about it. No, so the answer for that, if your question is, when do we just forget about it, the answer is never. Never, ever, ever, never, ever.
True.
Now, and we're not the only ones.
True.
The Jews say never forget.
Right.
So we're not going to forget either. And I suggest everybody else never forget, because forgetting would make a nice way for it to repeat itself.
I just want to see them ad. I said, just survey the people who basically said, and someone says, just to get their responses. Well, how would you guys feel if we include the atrocities and the things that happen under this particular condition that you want to have the flag and the statues? And we include the information that was, of course, a result of your philosophy with all those who are killed, and that there were celebrations like barbecue for hanging people.
Right.
Okay, I can go over and over in this and go
Right.
state by state and show you that it was advertisements like it was a club.
Exactly.
So show all that.
Show all that.
And then I can go with you because I can go, here's what happened. Here's the philosophy.
You sit and watch it with us.
It's economics, if you want to call it that. Call it whatever word you call it. And then let's just go show exactly what happened. And then you can say, well, it was economics. It was about Robert E. Lee. It was about that. Just show them. And your whole philosophy changed. But see, when you don't have to see it and don't want to look at it, it's totally different. I would love to have that.
That'll make you feel differently about Colin
yeah.
Kaepernick. You watch,
Right.
You watch that,
Right.
and that's important for people because again, for that first part, when will we just get over it? When you one, acknowledge what occurred, and two, assign responsibility to those historical figures that you're trying to make heroes.
Yep.
And you don't want to do that, but we're closer to it now, which is part of the monuments coming down. Part of the monuments coming down is America, to a degree, acknowledging her ugly history.
Right. Absolutely.
Acknowledging it.
Absolutely, man.
And remember, I said part 1 to is acknowledge what occurred, and 2, then I said assign historical responsibility.
Right. Absolutely.
And America does not want to do that. They don't want to call Robert E. Lee for what he was. See? They don't want to call him for that. So when do we get over it? We get over it when, 1, it is acknowledged by the America in general, the atrocities that occurred, and 2, when they assign historical responsibility.
Right.
In doing that, we can look at it and then begin to move forward.
Yeah.
Now, that's important to understand, because as a 61-year-old black man, when I watched the counter protests in Boston, Vic, I teared up.
I know
I
you
tell
did.
people, say, why you
I
say,
know you
I
did.
said, you guys, you don't know the America that I know. When
Well,
I grew up, everybody
young.
was Donald Trump, right,
Right,
Vic?
yeah.
Donald Trump, the way Donald Trump thinks and acts, that was the more liberal white folks. They just
Yeah.
weren't interested in overtly killing you.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
All right? Well, you had a bunch that was interested in doing you harm
Right.
on a daily basis. No offense. That was your America. It was racist.
Yeah.
Racist, overbearing, and you had to be prepared as a black man to deal with some kind of hostility from the community, the police, the infrastructure. At all times, you had to be prepared.
Yes. You did.
So that's the America I grew up with. So, and I have not been back to Boston because in the late 70s I went there and damn near had to fight off white boys on the street who acted like they wanted to intentionally bump into me, jostle
Right.
me,
Yep.
because on the street they was trying to do stuff. I thought I was going to have to fight.
Yep. Yeah.
Boston was the most racist city I had ever experienced, ever. And I never went back.
Yeah. And look, a lot of the media really references the strong history of racism in Boston.
In Boston.
They do, and it's a known fact.
And they
it's
still
not,
have
it's
a
not
whole
surprise.
cultural, that's their
Right.
thing.
It's just
so
the way it
when
is.
40,000, so Vic, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
That's why I was ready for some shit to go down. I was ready.
Yeah, you
So
were.
when 40,000 white folks, and it's mixed, but I got to put the credit here. This is a different generation. I want to say thank you. Because what you did with that 40,000 demonstration is you sat there and you shocked me. Because I had seen so many overt episodes of hatred toward my people
Right.
that when I see efforts that can be at least interpreted as a favor, being to some degree understanding your problems, your concerns, and acknowledging them,
Right.
I've never experienced that. That didn't exist. It would have been 40,000 the other way.
Right.
back in the day, in the 60s, okay? Maybe even the 70s. It would have been 40,000.
Right.
Just the other way.
Well, the difference I've always said, to me, just my point of view, and not everybody else, because I'm not, pro-political and that whole thing. Older folks tend to be political. Younger folks tend to be activists. And I've always said there was a lot of activism going on. And there's a teaching lesson here, whether it was Vietnam, activism, whether it was civil rights, what have you, activism. The hardest thing to do is bring a change in mission and philosophy to somebody who's over a certain age. Now, look, it's all relative. I'm not saying that everybody who is older, but we all have parents, cousins, and friends. You ever have a conversation with close folks that's over a certain age? You start talking to them about something, and the first words they say, back in the day. And that's their place. That's their anchor, because you're supposed to
never
you
be
need
there.
to move.
I'm trying
Just
hard.
get yourself around some activism, and you'll have a whole change. But most of us want to stay in what we call the sandbox cave of used to be. And it's appropriate that we go back and recognize. But don't sit there. And that's what I like about what happened with Boston, man.
Well, it was a wonderful thing to have it occur.
Yeah.
I remind people, too, that as bad as it seems sometimes, that this is the way it feels when progress is being made. And my age is why I know. I was there. I was in LA's first busing group.
Yeah.
I've seen a different America, and that America is not the America that exists today.
Right.
And that you can celebrate. And as I told a good friend of mine, Alan, I said, Alan, to be able to see that amount of progress in my lifetime, in a lot of ways, is very gratifying.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that everything's over or that the struggle's ended. No. Having an African-American president didn't do that, and it proves that it doesn't happen in that way, because look at what you're dealing with now. But look at the shift in the numbers. You can be proud. I tell people, don't be sad. Be glad that the majority of the people out there get it. The majority get it. Do you understand that means the world, we get to move forward? We get to move forward because there's going to be more understanding. And once there's more understanding, and you have, like I said, assigned responsibility, okay? When you've accepted the tragedy that this country has caused, when you acknowledge those things and assign historical responsibility, guess what? You will see all of us move forward. And you won't have to ask, will we just get over it? Because one day, we all will be over it.
So let me ask you this. Relative to South Africa, would you say they speeded ahead quite faster in accepting responsibility, the change, and then acknowledging it? Or they still have a ways to go? Because now the majority, of course, being, Africans of color, that they're on their way of recognizing the hardships that were attributed to that particular power group and control.
I don't know that,
Right.
Dick. That would be
All
a
right.
good question to ask and to go see. I know that example is one of the best ones to go look at.
Yes.
Because in our modern time, that represents one of the most significant shifts in power in our time. So we can go see, because they had a very stratified society based on color.
Yes, they did.
From the blacks, as they call them, to the colored, to the white. So
the majority. So
that would be one to go look at, and I would have to look at it and ask some folks from there.
And it had nothing. Let me take that back. It wasn't relative to the majority population, Afrikaners being, say, non-black. It was about power and control. So the number of a particular group may or may not be relative. So if, say, somebody's saying in the United States,
the population,
say, our numbers are going. I said, look at the South Africa example. It had nothing to do with the raw numbers.
Right. In this country, since you have the vote, theoretically, it makes it some.
That's what I'm saying.
That's where we could talk about voting rights and all that.
I'm only saying it's relative to what they say. You don't understand. The voting power here lies with those who are in power and the numbers. What about the philosophy and the greater good for all people? Maybe we could do that irrespective of who the majority group is.
certainly things to move forward and think about because they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
The moving forward at this stage is just to try to recognize the efforts that are going on
Right.
and to take stock of those.
I agree, man.
All right, everybody. That's the good news. The bad news and the other shit. Yeah. Good news. Bad news. And the other. Hey, all free music. All the time.